Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You are tuned into my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get happy, get balanced with that. And this is a show about hope and happiness. So there's no gossip, no scandal, and no K words. No Kardashian talk, no Kanye talk, because I want you to focus on your own reality show and how you can be happy 88% of the time. So to that end, we have topics: how to prevent cancer with Fran Drescher, to what it's like growing up in Hollywood with Corey Feldman. And you can get all of my past shows on my YouTube channel, free subscribe there, and anywhere I'm broadcasting, iHeartRadio, and as my home base, CNBC, NBC News Radio, KCAA, that's AM 1050, FM 103.5, 102.3, 106.5, and home to Dame Ramsey and the Asian Oprah. And I'm so delighted because I wanted to, as usual, put the moose on the table and talk about current things that are happening to you and how they might be making you a little bit unhappy. And obviously, unless you've been living in a cave in the middle of nowhere, you know we're going through the pandemic. You might remember a few months ago, I brought on an expert to talk about to mask or not to mask. And now the question is to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. So I brought back I'm going to call her my staff doctor for the show. And she is Dr. Alya Khan, occupational medicine residency director and assistant clinical professor at UCI. She's a board certified in both internal medicine and occupational medicine. Dr. Khan completed her residency training in internal medicine from Mountainside Hospital in Montclair, New Jersey, and a fellowship in occupational and environmental medicine from UC Irvine, where she also received a master's degree in environmental toxicology. So please welcome back to my studio, Dr. Alya Khan. Dr. Khan, welcome. So glad you could join me again. Thank you for taking the time, because you really are it's not token, but you are definitely my resident expert in something that I never thought would have so much issue, which is medical science. So you are my representative of medical science, and there's a lot of hullabaloo around vaccinations right now as we try to vaccinate people in America, and never thinking it was going to be this much trouble as well. But I wanted you to provide some reason and basis in medical science about vaccination. So I'm going to rewind right back to the beginning, just about vaccinations that, we kind of lost sight. Either you're someone who, just, okay, here you go, vaccinate me, and no questions asked, and just take the mainstream, okay, vaccinations are good for you, to this new thing that is just like, oh no, you're not touching me. So why would we want to vaccinate anything in the first place? So the history of vaccination in a little short time.
Sure. Thank you for having me on again. It's a pleasure to be here. Just as a reminder, I'm here to, let you know my personal views as a physician, and not here to represent my employer. And it's a great question asking about, the history of vaccinations. I think immunizations are, one of the miracles of medical science, that before we had immunizations, we had rampant infectious diseases, many deaths, and other issues and permanent issues. People can remember polio. and how many people became disabled at young childhood age. And now we don't have that issue. We're immunizing our children against polio, amongst many other diseases that can cause many ramifications, chronic issues and disability and death. And really what immunizations are is a way for your body to be able to fight an infection if you were to be introduced to it. So we have this amazing immune system where we can, and I tell this to my kids all the time about immunizations and how we build up antibodies to infections. And sometimes if we get infected, our immune system attacks the bacteria or the virus and eliminates it from our system. And it creates memory of that bacteria and the virus, so that we were exposed to it in the future, we can then fight it. But our immune system is also limited in the fact that we may not be able to fully fight the infection when we are sick, and that if we get reintroduced to a certain virus again, we may not fully be able to fight it again. Much like the common cold, which is a coronavirus, we can get common colds every year. And so we kind of lose that memory sometimes too. So immunizations really do help us prevent getting infected from very severe infectious diseases, and gives us that memory to fight them, even if we've been infected in the past too. So that's the basic, I would, very basic overview of why immunizations are important.
Got it. So let me see if I understood that. The body has a natural disease fighting ability that produces something to fight whatever that disease is. And by introducing a small bit of the actual disease, the body produces antibodies or an ability or a memory, as I like the way you said that, I've never heard that before, a memory of what that foreign body is to fight. Did I get that?
Yeah, you did a great job.
Okay, good. Sometimes I have to make sure I got that. So that's the principle or the fundamental science behind vaccinations, right? So if we go back, like you said, polio, and like flu shots, I don't even remember when that came in, but we began to make vaccinations, in kids, right? We want to protect them in school from getting those diseases that used to kill the kids, right? And for the most part, what was the data? So I would say, like you said, sometimes it forgets the memory. So even if you've had a vaccination, sometimes you're still going to get that sickness, right? There is that possibility. And if you're sick, sometimes by getting the vaccination, it can make you sicker. Is that accurate? Because the system is not perfect?
No, I would say that about our immune system, not about the vaccinations. So our immune system is not perfect. Okay. That's why you can get multiple colds in a year and colds year after year. We don't have a vaccine for the regular coronaviruses that cause the common colds. Flu is a bit different in that we do get the flu shots every year because we have different strains of flu floating around. So we have to be able to predict and expect what kind of flu we'll be having in our area, and then scientists develop the vaccine accordingly. So it's really our immune system is not perfect and needs that help from immunizations.
Got it. Now, what's the difference between cold viruses, which you say coronavirus is a cold? So we've had coronavirus for a long time, but we didn't necessarily associate all of this craziness with it, right? And then you have flu. So give me a little basic lesson around that.
Well, they're two different viruses. Coronaviruses are a family of viruses, really. So there's different types of coronaviruses. So the one that we're battling right now is called SARS-CoV-2. We've had another SARS before that really didn't have much of an effect on the US population. And we have other types of more benign coronaviruses. And then influenza is a virus that causes the flu. So they're different viruses, essentially.
Got it. And because the only difference I know is, what starve a fever, feed a cold. That's basically, never really understood it, but I've heard that, fevers, viruses, there's really, or is it colds? Which one has no solution? Which one, it does not respond to an antibiotic?
Well, our body just can develop antibodies really to any virus or bacteria. It really depends on some of the viruses, just very smart on how they escape and how they react. So, there are many different viruses and bacteria out there. Okay. And depending on the virus and the bacteria and how they infect us, is how our body is going to develop an immune response, and everyone's going to be acting differently depending on the virus and bacteria too. Some people who have a lower efficient immune system, people who are on immunosuppressant medication, for example, may not be able to fight a virus or a bacteria as compared to a young, healthy person. So there's a lot of nuances there.
Got it. So now we're to today with this special coronavirus. And the last time you came on, one of the things that I got out of it is how much we don't know. At that time, we did not know very much about the coronavirus. We didn't understand it. We didn't, we couldn't anticipate. We were just really clueless as to this specific strain of the coronavirus. So what has changed since we last talked about what we do know about the coronavirus?
So when we started with the pandemic back in January, February of last year, and really March, we knew very little about the virus. It's a novel coronavirus. It's a new coronavirus, and we're still learning. We have to be humble that we're still learning about this virus. But in the span of a year, we have learned a lot about this virus and how it attacks the immune system, what kind of illness it can cause, at least in the short term. We still have to learn more about the long-term effects about this virus, which is the scary part. And we've learned how to prevent infection, masking, social distancing, hand washing, they work. And how to treat infections in the hospital. We've gotten better in terms of treatment. And now the fact that we have not just one vaccine, but 2 vaccines, possibly 3 in the near future, that is a scientific miracle. I would just say that.
It is a scientific miracle. So yeah, let's talk about that miracle. Like you said, there's 1 or 2 out, and I've heard and spoken to people who say, I believe in vaccinations. I think they're a good thing. I want to get a vaccination, but I'm a little concerned. Like, this was such a, is it really a miracle, or is it a rush to, we got to fix this. We got to get a solution. So let's rush to clinical trials, rush through that process, rush through the normal, what takes years, and jump on it so that it takes 3 months. So can we trust this whole process that to bring to market these vaccines?
So the trials that were done for the vaccines that are now have a EUA approval from the FDA, the Pfizer and the Moderna trials, they were speedy in their development and their trial, but that doesn't mean that there were shortcuts. And the FDA has reviewed the studies, and they have a high standard for safety. These clinical trials are very robust. And like I said, held to a very high standard of safety. And there are multiple phases to a clinical trial. You probably heard on the news, you have your phase 1 trial, phase 2, phase 3. And all these phases are looking at safety and efficacy of the vaccine. So, our listeners should really understand that there's such a high integrity and ethics that are involved in doing clinical trials. Also important to note that we've been studying coronaviruses for a long time. So even though this is a novel coronaviruses, scientists have been studying other types of coronaviruses. This specific coronavirus was genetically sequenced in the early days of the pandemic, which really helped scientists get a hold of, how this virus is infecting people, and then subsequently starting to make or develop research to make this vaccine. The Pfizer, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so I was just going to say that the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines have this what's called mRNA technology, and which is a huge thing because it's the first time we're using it in a vaccine. However, it's not the first time it's been used or researched. And scientists have been using mRNA technology to look at other vaccines and cancer research. And it's very nimble in how we can use this new technology with vaccines. And funding, I just have to say there's been a lot of funding that's put into this specific vaccine trials, which we typically don't get in other vaccines. And if you really have funding, you can get a lot done. There's also been a lot of collaboration between different countries and leaders and governments and scientists and researchers and pharmaceutical companies, because we're in a pandemic and this is an emergency, and there was a sense of need to do this as fast as possible without cutting any corners, really. And the other thing I would just note is with clinical trials, you need enough volunteers to participate. And really, they did get a lot of volunteers in both the Pfizer and the Moderna, which helped get to their results.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if you've just tuned in and you're wondering who I'm talking to, and you sort of recognize her, you are tuned in to Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It, Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa every Friday at primetime drive time on my KCAA CNBC NBC News Radio channel. And my repeat guest today is Dr. Alya Khan to answer the question. She was here before, to mask or not to mask, and today it's to vaccinate and not to vaccinate. And you just gave us information that I would say is not in mainstream media. All we hear about are the things that are not working, that are going wrong, that we're not cooperating in. And this is exactly why I wanted to bring you on, to provide the balance of the good news. The good news is we are collaborating. We are having a sense of urgency. There is care. You can't just shortcut, is what you're saying, the whole process of bringing a vaccine to market. And, I'm going to skip to a question I was going to ask later. This whole conspiracy justified ignorance is what I'm calling it. My new hashtag is justified ignorance. It's that if you're listening and you have set your mind that this is, just a bunch of people like Bill Gates who want to get rich, and so all this, vaccines is just to make the companies rich and to scare the common person, speak to that, please.
Well, I would just say that knowledge is power. And especially in this age of digital media, social media, we can get our knowledge from so many different sources. And it can be very confusing. I have patients who, are regularly confused about what is the reality? Is this a good thing? Is this not a good thing? There's a lot of mixed messages. So I understand if people are confused, because there is a lot of different ways that we can get our news and our information and our resources. So I think being able to know what your reputable resources are is very important, and being able to just educate ourselves on the science and the facts can help us with any uneasiness that we may have, any questions that we may have. So I would just say, trust the scientists and the physicians, and read up on using reputable journals and articles that are out there. Sometimes the mainstream media may not be able to provide all those type of resources to us. But the CDC has some great information on their website for the public, and your local healthcare departments may have that. I'm in Orange County, so the Orange County Healthcare Agency website has a lot of information and FAQs that the public can read up on the vaccine.
Beautiful. And where do you go for your information besides the Orange County?
It depends on what I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for, data on, how many vaccines are out there and what the case numbers are looking like, the health department and is a great resource because I want to know what's going on in my local area. Johns Hopkins website has another great resource to track, globally the cases that are going on. And I personally read journal articles that are evidence-based, peer-reviewed journals from, like, example, New England Journal of Medicine. They have a lot of great information. It's more technical though, so if you want to really get into the weeds of the vaccine, they have a great FAQ document too. That if you really want to get into the weeds, you can look into that too. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is really, if we're going to make this work, we have to stop, contempt before investigation and running off with whoever posted the last sensational thing about, the vaccinations and all of this cancel culture that we have, and the social media trying to control what is said and what is not said. I think the knowledge is power is, as you said, the most important thing. Do the research, look it up yourself. Don't believe a flash in the pan statement from anyone. And I have to say this because, without getting political, we've really had trouble with conspiracy theory more than we ever have in our entire my experience alive. And I think one of the reasons is the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu says, in the absence of greatness, pettiness prevails. And that, to me, explains why we've had problems with conspiracy theories. We've got no leadership saying, this is what we're facing, and the transparency. So now the good news is we have transparency. I've never seen that word used as much as before. So that's the good news. So that's what we're focused on today on this show. And just before we continue with some more questions, we're going to go to break to thank the sponsors and to do my little announcements at the same time that make this show possible. If you are interested in becoming a sponsor of Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It, then please do message me as I continue to try to splatter more hope and happiness all over you. And we'll be back in 2 and 2.
And now, back to The Host, a show that picks your next big radio host. Here's the host of The Host, Dr. Marissa Pei.
And those are invitations for you to be part of 2 activities that I'm involved in right now. One is the 21-day fast from complaining with Dr. Marissa, an effort for you to focus on something you can control. So if you want to take up the dare, sign up at drmarissa.life. 21 consecutive days in a row, not complaining And if you're able to do that, I double your $21 back. As well, you may know I'm doing the host, which is KCAA's version of The Voice. So if you think you have what it takes to be a radio announcer, then please do register at I always get this wrong, NBCradionews.com, and register there. Our next audition is March the 3rd. So please do register for that. And we're back to take my advice. I'm not using it. Get happy with Dr. Marissa. My guest today is Dr. Alya Khan, who's not just a doctor, a medical doctor who's working. She also has a degree and experience and a background and a knowledge of environmental toxicology, which is why I asked her here to talk about the reality of to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. If you're just tuning in now and you missed the first half of the show, just subscribe to my free YouTube or go into the archives of KCAA because it's important information. So my next question for Dr. Khan is, now that, okay, maybe I am more comfortable with the vaccinations, now we're in this, what the press has called this confusion, this mess, this overpromise, underdeliver strategy in rolling out the vaccination. Can you give me a little bit of insight on that and maybe some hope?
Yeah, I agree that there's a lot of frustration and anxiety around the vaccine rollout. And I wish, personally, that we could get more vaccines into arms as soon as possible. It's very county dependent right now and very state dependent. Different states are doing different things and how they're rolling things out. There's been different allocation to each state, the number of vaccines they're getting from the federal government, and then it comes down to the county. So it's this top-down flow that's been happening for the vaccines. So I can say it's not perfect, but we are moving better along the terms of how many shots we're getting into people's arms. So I think that's a good thing and a reason to be hopeful. In Orange County, we hope to get our next tier vaccinated soon. So I think there is reason to be hopeful, and I would ask people just be patient while they're waiting for their turn to get vaccinated.
Yeah, and then that is, anytime someone thanks me for being patient, I look over my shoulder because they cannot be talking about me. Patience is not a virtue that I have, but really, during this time, my hashtag Happy88 admonition to everyone is just give people the benefit of the doubt that they're doing the best that they can. That this is a process that we're going through, and getting angry at why someone got a vaccine and you didn't is not going to help. We are going to get everyone vaccinated that wants to be vaccinated. And it is just going to take time. Yes, that's my commercial for patience, for myself, more so than probably anyone else. But let's go to the vaccination question, which is, they say, I've heard, that even if you get vaccinated, you still have to wear a mask, you still have to social distance because it's not guaranteed. The early results of the efficacy of the vaccine are not clear. Is it really working or not? So the vaccines, at least I can speak to Pfizer and Moderna, because that's the ones that are the ones that are being administered right now. They have they're basically twin vaccines. They're both mRNA vaccines, like I mentioned earlier. And their efficacy is 95% in preventing symptoms of COVID-19. And the Moderna vaccine says it's about 100% effective in preventing very severe disease. So the fact that they are so effective is absolutely amazing. Certainly the scientific community wasn't expecting such a high efficacy. Really?
If you think about the flu vaccine, it can be anywhere from 40 to 50% effective. And we still encourage people to get their annual flu vaccines. So the fact that Pfizer and Moderna have such a high efficacy in preventing symptoms from COVID-19 is absolutely amazing. So the reason that, we are still asking people to mask and socially distance and not just, rip off the Band-Aid, let's just say, after getting vaccinated, is because it's not 100% effective, right? 1 in 20 people can still develop symptoms from COVID-19 even after the 2 doses of the vaccine. And really, we don't know for sure if it can prevent transmissibility. I mean, we pretty much can think that it would prevent transmissibility, but we need more data to be able to tell us for sure that if we get vaccinated, we're not just transmitting the virus, even if we're asymptomatic.
Okay.
And so really, we're looking for herd immunity before the public health officials will tell us that we can stop the masking and the social distancing and all those different protocols. And I don't expect this will be like a light switch. I think it's more like a dimmer where things will start to get eased and get back into what we considered normal. And so that's what I expect. So I think, again, people, have to remain patient again. That even if we get the vaccine, we still want to maintain the same protocols. We've been doing this already for a year, so we only have to do it for a little bit longer. And then hopefully with more data, we can ease up on some of the public health measures. And we know these public health measures work really, really well. So we don't want to just stop the public health measures at this point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this again, I'm going to put the moose on the table. It's like, if you have decided that all this science, all this medical science, all these processes that Dr. Khan is presenting to us, that she has state research on top of, that she does read, that she trusts. She's not a blind faith kind of person. She's a research-based person. I'm going to believe her and do my own research. But please, those of you who are so dismissive of all of this because you hear one thing, 1 out of 20, so it's not perfect, and so then why bother? Or we don't know about the transmissibility, so then it's really not working. I hear this stuff and it just drives me crazy. So I'm talking about it. And then those who say, the ridiculous part of this is, this virus is carrying a microchip so that, we're all going to be programmed, or it's the end of the world, or all of that. I don't even want to say the name of it or the numbers because it's so ridiculous to me. And the pettiness that is prevailing on that one is the public health officials have put this in place. One, because we were horrible at the beginning of listening to any reason to Fauci or the CDC. And so the public health measures were put in place because we didn't listen. We didn't do it on our own. If we're not going to do it on our own, well, then it's going to be mandated. So I'm sorry, I just had to rant just for a little on this because I'm so hopeful that by having you here on my platform and hopefully sharing this to anyone that's still on the fence or that is right now hearing those sound bites that are hashtag, justifiably ignorant, then you have science here. You have the ability to listen to science, medical science, and all of the measures. And the proof is in the numbers. So the numbers that last time I had you on, we were all-time high, what was it? You give me the numbers.
Honestly, I can't remember the numbers from last time. I mean, I would just say, our numbers have always been high recently. We've been, especially this last surge, it was very bad. I would say the numbers have been coming down, which is nice. When people started gathering during the holidays, that really did drive up the surge that we had. So we are vaccinating at higher numbers, like I said now. So there is promise, and then there's hope for the future.
Yeah. And I think, would you say safely that the numbers coming down, I think the governor was 140 down to 40. There was some a drastic drop. Why are the numbers falling?
Well, I don't know if I have all the answers to that, but I would say that, like I mentioned earlier, the latest surge that we had was, a lot of it was driven by the fact that people were gathering, especially for the holidays. We had Thanksgiving, we had Christmas, we had New Year's. So it was many, and then it was Halloween right before that. So there were so many different events that were occurring at the same time. Plus you have the winter months, so people are more likely to meet indoors. And we know indoors is more riskier than outdoors. And so since New Year's, we haven't had those major types of holiday gathering types of events. So we do expect that, it's expected that some of the numbers would come down.
Mm-hmm. Now,
and people are maybe, people are hopefully masking more. So that will definitely be helping as well.
Okay. So what does an average person need to do besides masking, besides social distancing, besides washing your hands a lot? Are there any supplements to be taking? I've been taking zinc and vitamin D because I heard that, because we're spending more time indoors, we're not getting as much sun. Do you have any recommendations that way?
I mean, supplements can be great to boost the immune system. So that would be fine if people wanted to do something like that. They can certainly talk to their personal doctor too about their personal health concerns. If they're at the higher risk category, if they have other medical conditions, they may want to be a little more careful. But really, masking, social distancing, washing hands, staying away from people is the most important thing you can do. I can't emphasize this more that, people getting into these bubbles and these pods can be risky. Life is not without risk, of course. So whenever we're making these types of choices, whether we go out to meet with a friend or we invite someone into our home or we go to the grocery store even, we're all taking some type of risk. So we just need to take that into consideration as we move forward and making sure that we try to mitigate and lower that risk as much as possible with our daily actions.
Right. So, I mean, even as we sort of have more hope, like someone will say, let's have dinner together, and we'll stay socially distant and we'll, sit 6 feet. And then I see them and they go in for a hug and I'm like, I want to highlight what you're saying about the vaccine, that even if one person has had the vaccine, that does not mean that it is not transmissible, right? They are helping themselves with the vaccine, not necessarily protecting me with that vaccine. Is that about accurate?
Well, we don't know for sure yet, right? So we're still looking for the data on transmissibility. We expect that it's likely reducing transmissibility. And from early data from the Moderna vaccine, we did see some of that. But certainly if someone has had their vaccines and they're getting together with other people, public health officials are not recommending that yet. We're not recommending easing up on our social interactions. Doesn't mean that you can't still stay in touch with people. I mean, mental health still remains a big issue in this pandemic, and we still want people to stay connected, whether it's through the phone, Zoom, and being responsible when we meet with each other. We don't want people to be isolated either.
Right. That is the balance that's going on, because they're doing studies now of what happens to your mental health 8 months without a hug. And it's realistic. And, for you have a family, that's kids and a husband. I'm on my own, I do this every day. because it stimulates something comforting, and it is something that I recommend too with my clients, as well as meditation, as well as a gratitude list, as well as, I wrote an article with tips specifically. Every day is a mental health day, folks. This is your responsibility to pick up the phone or to do the Zoom. So absolutely, that's important. Now, so for those who say, if we're not sure about all of the efficacy, why bother with the vaccine? So we're going to go full circle now. What are the benefits of having this COVID-19 vaccine?
So it's always, it's kind of like the glass half full analogy, right? You can either look at it as half full or half empty. So the fact, like I said, is there has been 95% efficacy with both Pfizer and Moderna. I mean, that's an A, right? If you get a 95% on your test, that's a great, right? So that's what I would look at it. When I make recommendations to my patients or my family, I always look at risks versus benefits. What is the risk of the vaccine? What is the risk of having the actual infection? What's the benefit, right? And there's a clear bias towards the benefit of the coronavirus vaccine. And there's a much higher risk of the infection complications, right? The infection is not without complications. And
let's talk about that. I want to be very clear about what we're vaccinating against, because some people, saw Trump, got it, no big deal, he's fine. Most people have no problems with it, so it's really overdone, and we're making a big thing out of nothing. So speak to that. What are the complications? What is real about this virus?
This, like I said, this is a novel coronavirus. So we're still learning about the ramifications of this virus. And so, yes, most people who develop COVID-19 fare fine in terms of, not getting hospitalized or getting or dying from the actual vaccine. Though the mortality rate is still higher than the flu. But a lot of people do get hospitalized, and they may not necessarily have underlying medical conditions. So we just want to make sure people are aware of that. And we're still learning about the possible long-term effects and the issue of what's called long haulers, if you may have heard that, where people who recovered somewhat from COVID-19, but are still having residual symptoms months after the initial illness. It's actually very scary, where they get this excessive fatigue, trouble breathing, body aches. And these are people who are healthy and somewhat athletic, and people who are marathon runners and whatnot. So we don't know why it's happening to these people, and that's being investigated. There's been studies that's shown some underlying cardiac heart effects on people who develop COVID-19, neurocognitive issues that can develop, people developing brain fog and everything. So, there's a lot we still have to learn about the long-term potential effects from COVID-19, especially those who have underlying medical conditions too. But it can happen in young, healthy people as well. So there's a lot of risk in contracting COVID-19. We shouldn't be treating this mildly, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And let's just take a minute and let that sink in. So if you're a person that's saying, oh, the numbers are, the numbers aren't accurate, and they're putting COVID on death certificates that don't belong there, and it's really just a cold, and it's, people are not dying from this, and it's making a big marketing thing out of nothing to put fear in our hearts. Please, did you just listen to that? Long hauler effects. People without pre-existing medical conditions are getting sick. I just talked to someone yesterday, perfectly healthy athlete, took her down for 2 weeks, and she still does not have her sense of taste back. Do you really want to take a stand as a no one's going to tell me what to do, and I blanket not accepting any vaccinations because, you know, people die from them. And, we have to talk about that in a second. But, you know, just please listen to the whole story. Don't go off on your one-off from an anecdotal something. You accuse scientists of making MSU, you know, making shiitake up. It's science. They go through protocols. You're making decisions based on a BS, a belief system that is not helping you, and it's not helping any of us. You know, the fact that so many people in Orange County don't wear masks, that hurts me. You know, that doesn't hurt just you. You're affecting everybody around you. So sorry, I'm going to get unfriended a lot just based on that little diatribe. But I did want to talk about people are the anti-vaxxers, which I'm going to try to be nice. The ones that always point out, well, so-and-so died from getting a vaccine. Will you please speak to that?
Sure. So after you get a vaccine, you can actually sign up for this app called vSafe, and CDC will actually check up on you after your vaccine, remind you for your second dose, and see how you're doing in terms of your symptoms. And they also have other reporting mechanisms if you develop any adverse effects. So they have been tracking adverse effects after the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, and it's looking to be very safe. And in terms of deaths, as you state, you know, we want to be careful on how we make assumptions. Just because if someone dies after a COVID-19 vaccine doesn't necessarily mean it's due to the vaccine. People can die from many different reasons. And it's just, you know, if you, I have a bad example here, but if you have the COVID-19 vaccine and you drive in a car and a drunk driver hits you and you die, it's not the vaccine, it's a drunk driver, right? So when people say, you know, there's deaths, or those things are being investigated by CDC, and they have not seen that happen. You know, the vaccine has been shown to be very safe, and they're tracking the adverse effects.
Mm-hmm. So if you see a post that says this person took a vaccine and then they died, before you start sharing that forking post, please go to the data. Make sure who's you know, what news, you know, are they real news? You know, is it fake news? And go to the science, please, before you share the post. Sorry, another pet peeve rant that I'm having here. So let's see. I think we've covered the ones I promised. Do you feel safe? Dying, no guarantees. Oh, okay. So what's your take on this whole conspiracy thing? Like people that are saying that this is an effort to plant a microchip in in the vaccine, so everybody has a microchip.
Well, we have these, right?
Right.
That's what I would say. I mean, I think our phones track us much more than anything else, but no, I mean, it's really sad to see these conspiracy theories out there and people who take advantage of those who are vulnerable to conspiracy theories. There's been conspiracy theories for, I don't know how long, but for long as history, I'm sure. And like I would say, it's knowledge is power, empowering yourself with knowledge from reputable sources, not just YouTube or WhatsApp groups and those kinds of things, or Facebook groups, but making sure that you're looking at the reputable sources, making sure it makes sense. You know, I've gotten my 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. I can't wait for you and everyone else to get their vaccine.
Me too. Yeah, I could fudge, and you know, because I'm a retired professor and put myself under educator, but you know, I'll just wait my turn. And because, you know, I have to practice what I teach. And, you know, it's going to be okay. Really? I mean, it's going to be okay. And is it that big of a deal? to do, like you said, maybe half a year, one more year. It's not forever. This is not a punishment for anything. It is just something, shiitake happened, shift happened. And now, I use this question all the time when something's happening and I don't like it. What am I being asked to develop in this exact situation that's going to make me a better person or grow and expand me? Or, how can I find happiness even now? So that's what I'm leaving with and trying to splatter or get you to drink my rose-colored Kool-Aid. What are your final words for people who right now are in the situation that everyone is? What is your advice? What would you hope? What is your recommendation?
I think people should stay optimistic. I'm optimistic. We're kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And we just need people to stay strong in the final moments. I'm looking forward to finally meeting my family again. And but we're taking it day by day and making sure that we stay safe until we can meet each other again. So I would just say that these are positive things. The fact that we're here, we had a vaccine within a year of us identifying that we're in a pandemic. It's very sad that so many people have died from this disease and so many more have suffered in other ways, whether it's been family or friends that have been affected or being hospitalized or having these types of, chronic issues after the illness, or just disruption in our lives, from businesses to losing our jobs and the impact of school. So it's impacted us in so many different ways, even if we didn't directly get sick. But, like I said, we are all working collaboratively. This is a worldwide pandemic, and we have vaccines here, not just one, but we have two that work really well. So I'm really excited about the future. I know we've all been tired from 2020 and the beginning of 2021, and we're all just looking to breathe some sigh of relief soon.
Absolutely. And for that and many more reasons, I am presenting you with the Dr. Marissa Beneficial Presence on the Planet Award for Dr. Alya Khan. Thank you so much for the work that you do on the front line. First and foremost, thank you for taking the time, valuable time, to be a beacon of light in the medical science field. My last question that I always ask my clients, I don't know if we had time to do that. Who are you most grateful to or for in your life?
I'm most grateful to my family. My husband especially. He's been working from home and holding up the front at home too. And so it takes a team effort. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Take my advice. I'm not using it. Get happy with Dr. Marissa, Dr. Alya Khan. And tune in again as this is the place where you get splattered with more hope and happiness. Remember, it's all about balance. Peace in, peace out. World peace through inner peace. Dr. Marissa reporting love on Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Please.
Well, she has been dubbed the Asian Oprah, and she just wants all of us to be happy.
Dr. Marissa, aka the Asian Oprah, says the most important thing you can choose is choosing to be happy.
You are tuned into my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa.
That's the idea for Dr. Marissa Pay's new book called 8 Ways to Be Happy.
Many of us say, I am my own worst critic. Nobody's harder on me than I am. And my response to that is, stop it. Why are you doing that to yourself? You have to be your biggest fan, because if you can't at the end of the day say, I did a good job, who is? We don't have to constantly be angry at the things that are wrong. Why don't we choose to be happy about things that are right? We have the choice. That's our muscle. And life is so amazing if we can see it.